Hey guys, what's up? Tamara here. So tonight, Octavia from Read, Sleep, Repeat is here with me to discuss the first two books in the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. This is a really good series, and I'm glad that you guys are here, and welcome, Octavia.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on the channel.
Yeah, thank you. Like, she's one of my good book blogging friends, and she is so gracious to join us today and chat up these two wonderful books. So I guess we'll just jump right in, right?
Yeah, sounds like a plan to me.
All right. So where
Okay.
shall we start?
Well, book one, Darkfever. Let's go ahead and get the overall out the way. Overall, I liked the book.
Hmm.
I didn't love it, but I liked it.
I hear you. I feel you on that. I liked it. I gave it, I think, the first when I first I listened to it on audio, and when I first rated it a year ago, when I listened to it, I gave it a 3 out of 5. So I thought it was middle of the road,
I can
to
see
say the
that.
least. But I feel a different way now.
I I really liked it. I did. At the end of the day, obviously, because I read the next two books back to back, I liked it. My number one problem with book one, though, was the pace. It was so, for the first 100, 180 pages, it was so unbelievably slow. Even though there was a murder, she moved across, the world, she met these people, things started happening. It was still so slow.
Yeah, it was. It was slow. Not only was it slow, um, but for me, because I listened to it on audio, the narrator was the worst, the worst. So it made the slow pace, like it compounded with the bad narrator.
Mm.
So I almost
Yeah,
gave up. I almost gave up. Let's just say that.
I read it. I didn't listen to audio, so thank goodness I didn't have to bear through that.
Yeah.
But I can honestly say I've had this book for about 2 years now. I've started it 3 times and just kept putting it to the side. Once you get past that 180 mark, though, it picks up,
That's better.
and you really want to figure out, okay, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? I mean,
Yeah.
overall the pace was slow, but after you get over that first hump, you become curious instead of just like, why am I learning all this stuff?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not only that, I felt that Mac was really hard to like. She was so childlike, so stupid.
Yes, yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
It took a minute to get past my issues with Mac to get into the meat of it all.
It's she was so it just took a long time for her to grow on you. She was just not the brightest bulb in the pack.
Mhm. Mhm. She was not. And not only that, I mean, so she's dumb. The pace is a little slow. The men in the book aren't that friendly. I mean, it was a lot of things working against it, but things did turn around. Oh
They
yes.
did. They
And
did.
yeah.
It was a nice turnaround when it did finally turn around.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. What was your favorite thing about the book?
The plot, easy.
Uh-huh.
It was the pace was slow, yes, but the concept and the way that it was written, all of that just it made it worthwhile to keep going. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I wanted to know what was going to happen next. I didn't
Mhm.
know who done it, but I needed to know who did it. It was
Mhm.
the plot was my absolute favorite part. Easy.
I feel you. I did enjoy the plot, but I think my favorite part was actually how Moning wrote the book. It was the first time I've ever read anything that was told in a diary form, like a diary to the reader about what happened. And I think that was the thing that intrigued me the most about it.
That was nice. It was refreshing. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't think I've ever read a book that was written from that kind of perspective, and it was nice to be able to experience it looking back the way that Mac was looking back. Even though she annoyed me, yes, she did. It was still nice to look back on the events and what happened from her perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Mac was the worst. She was actually for most of that book, I want to say she was almost the worst thing about the book, which is ironic because she's the heroine. And but the first book, I felt a way about her.
Hmm.
So
I did.
oh yeah, between her and I think my second biggest problem with the book was, thank goodness for audio, because without the audio, I would have never been able to pronounce cease to do. I think I'm still saying it wrong. I would have never been able to pronounce sears. I mean, all these things that keep coming up, they have strange names, strange spellings, and that annoys me for some reason. But thank God, audio saved me. I'm
I
having to
gave
suffer
up.
that.
You know what? I wish I had the audiobook just for that reason. I gave up trying to pronounce it. After a while, I just started calling the women seers, and I called the book that they were after the bad book. That was it. I could not keep up. And I'm sorry if, we got anybody from Ireland watching and they look, it's not like that. I just could not pronounce it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
So I really
yeah,
do wish I
I
had
hear
the
you.
audiobook for that reason.
Yeah. See, that was a good thing. So aside from now, I think the problem with the audio though is that the accent of the narrator, it was so fake and so bad, and like Mac is 22 years old, but the narrator sounded like she was in her mid to late 40s, so her voice didn't exactly match her character, which was a big problem for me. But thankfully I hear, and it's true, that the narrator does change, so that kept
Oh,
me motivated to go forward.
yeah, I wouldn't have been able to stick with. I mean, that's one of the biggest thing about audiobooks is that you want to be able to really feel like the character is talking to you. You can't do that if they sound like they're 20 years older than the actual character.
Exactly,
You
exactly.
can't. So, but I am happy that at least, in future books it does change.
Yeah. So let's jump right into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about the men in Dark Fever.
Let's not and say we did. I know this is going to come to a lot of people as a shock, but going in, everyone talked about, oh, Barron's Jericho, he's the best, he's this, you're gonna be team. It's like, no. At the end of book one, I wasn't on either team, Jericho's or Blaine's. And to be perfectly honest, I thought Jericho was a jerk, and I thought Blaine was just up to no good. So,
I
not impressed.
agree. I totally agree with you. I felt like uh, Barron's was like the biggest asshole, for lack of a better word, for the whole book. I'm like, what is his dang on problem? He is like the worst. He is not set. I just felt like he was an old dude that acted like an ass. I could not figure out what was so sexy about him.
No, he really got on my nerves. I really did not like. The only thing that I really liked about Jericho was he was mean when necessary. Mac, as we said, was not the sharpest tool in the shed, and Jericho was really good with telling her, like, look, you expecting too much out of me. I'm not this superhero. I'm not this villain. I'm only in this for myself. I was like, you know what? I appreciate your honesty right there. But
Oh
outside
yeah.
of that, he was a bit of a jerk.
Yeah, he was. He was, but you're right. He was a necessary jerk because Max. Sometimes she needed the push. So yeah, it was like a necessary evil.
Right. And a lot of the times in books we like to, romanticize this jerk and say, "Oh, but underneath all of that, he has this big gooey heart." And Jericho was like, "No, underneath this, my heart is basically, non-existent." I'm like,
Mm-mm.
finally. I mean, he was still a jackass, but it
Oh
was nice
yeah,
to see he was an honest jackass.
no, yeah, he's stone cold through and through. He don't even care. He like, look, I'm gonna keep you alive because I need something
I
from you,
need
and
you.
that's about it.
I like that about him. But on the flip side, you have Blaine, who was completely not like that. Blaine was like, yeah, I need something from you, but I'm not going to be as brutal with it. I'm going to like you and be nice to you and, make you feel like you can trust me. And for that, I was just like, look, man, after having this big dose of honesty from Jericho, I really
Hmm.
just wanted Blaine to be like, look, I'm a fairy. Everything I'm saying is talking in circles. I only
Hmm.
need you right now because you consist the book.
Hmm. Hmm. Though Lane, I kind of felt like he was. At first he was kind of like scary in the fact that, he was constantly trying to push his power on her. He was constantly trying to get her naked, all that stuff that was going on. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
he can't be trusted. But in the end, I kind of felt like he was a byproduct of just being a fairy and not necessarily that he was malicious. So ultimately, in book one, I think I liked Blaine better than Barron's, even though
Oh
he was a
yeah,
little shady.
hands down. If I had to pick a team based off of book one alone, Team
Mhm.
Blaine, easy.
Mhm. I agree.
I,
Yeah.
I I liked him a lot more than Jericho, obviously. But wait, side note, since we are talking about characters, and you know what, I'm mad that I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. The um the woman who was working for Jericho in the shop. Wait, I have a spot right here.
Oh, her name
Theo.
is, oh
Her
my,
name's Theo. I just looked it up.
what is it?
Theo. Oh, it's
Yep.
Fio. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but just speaking about characters, when we get into side characters and supporting characters, let me just say, Moaning has a gift.
Mhm.
You think that a side character is a side character until the side character says, "Nah, I want the spotlight," and
Oh
that's all I'm
yeah.
gonna say about that. That's
Oh yeah.
all I'm gonna say.
This woman was unbelievable.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, she was unbelievable. I didn't expect that from her. Like, I could tell something was off with her from day one, but I couldn't tell that she would go
To
as
that
far as
extreme.
she did. Yeah.
Like I knew she had claws. I didn't know
Mhm.
she was like vicious too, though.
Yeah.
Like, that
Yeah.
was hats off, Moaning, because I would have never expected it.
I
Ever.
know, and it's funny. I give her props, and it's funny because you don't see until I feel like it's maybe it was book three or maybe it was two where it's revealed like the root of her crazy.
Yep.
When you get there, you're like, oh, wow.
It all pieces together. And
Mhm.
for everyone watching, is again, it's more so back into the when Moaning writes a side character, eventually they will come up and say, "Nope, I want the spotlight." Just
Oh
be
yeah,
prepared.
yeah, they absolutely do. I mean, even I can't remember, was Danny in the first book? Yes, she was. Yep, she had her little
Mhm.
intro when and I mean, even she seemed like she wanted to tug at the limelight a little bit with her little zippity self all over the place and being mouthy and everything.
Right. And I understand that it's because we want to be. She wanted us to experience the world in its entirety, but the side characters really weren't more side characters or even supporting characters. I want to say they were more than that because
Mhm.
eventually they get their own voice, their own spotlight, their own moment to shine, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, these side characters, I mean, the sub characters, they added a lot to the story because, like we mentioned earlier, we both kind of had problems with Mac in the first book. And if it had just been mostly Mac and Jericho Barons, I think I would have been like, I don't think I can continue.
I would
So
have
I
easily
think that other stuff helped.
agreed. Totally agree.
Mhm.
Totally agree on that one. And speaking of Danny, we get to see more of her in book two, Blood Fever, which I will say right now, I've read books one through three.
Mhm.
Out of all three books so far, book two is my favorite.
Yeah,
Book
it's a
two is my
good
favorite.
book. It's a good book. I feel like I especially loved the leaps and bounds that Mac accomplished in book two. I mean, I feel like she grew a lot in that book
She did.
more than, yeah, and I love that because I felt like, oh, finally, okay, we got rid of that little whiny, young, little,
I want
dumb,
to wear
and
pink all the time, and
exactly.
the was I can't remember if it was book one or book two. I think it was book two. But the whole, I'm gonna be myself and dress how I want while I go into the vampire slayer.
Yeah, actually, didn't she call herself? I hope I'm not giving a spoiler, but I think it was book two that she called herself Mac 2.0. Wasn't that right? She had rebooted herself and she said she was Mac 2.0.
2.0, like really? She,
Yeah.
I mean, Mac had her flaws, but in book two, she did grow a lot. And I think a lot of that stemmed from Danny, who was
Hmm.
younger and who, needed, well, didn't necessarily need anything, but who we felt needed, just some type of maternal guidance, if
Oh
you
yeah,
will.
absolutely. Yeah, Danny needed that a lot. And I think that Mac, and it's funny because when Mac went to Dublin, her older sister had died. And so now she's almost the older sister to Danny. So it's like her role has shifted. And that has probably contributed to her growing up a little bit as well. You know?
Right, I totally agree with that. And it came at a great point. Danny, I mean, Mac, like you said, had just lost her sister. She went, trying to find her murderer, and she really was completely alone in this new place. She was finding out all this new stuff about herself, about the world that she thought she knew that didn't really exist. And she didn't have a working relationship with Baron. She didn't have like a real trusting relationship with Blaine or anyone else. And then here comes Danny, and it's like she needed that like anchor, if you will, in Ireland.
She did. Like, it's funny how Danny is such a minor character, but in the scheme of things, she becomes a really big major character
Hmm.
for this series.
Totally
So,
agree. I can't stand Danny.
yeah.
Cannot stand her. Oh, I cannot stand her because she does have such a young voice. But I am very excited to see how she grows throughout the series.
Yeah. I've read through, I am actually on book 5, and I feel like at book 5, just skipping ahead just a little, she still really hasn't grown that much. In book 5, maybe a little something or another. So I'm hoping that even going further on in the series, we actually do get to see her at 20 years old or something like that. I would love to see Danny, at Mac's age now,
Mm.
22 or something, just to see how she turns out.
I would like that. That would be nice. Well, we do have a few more books in the series. I think I was on Goodreads earlier, and there were 8, 9 on Goodreads of just sequels.
Mm,
So we might get to see that. That would be nice.
yeah,
Um,
it would.
Seeing
Hmm.
her, and I know, of course, I'm jumping ahead, but seeing her in book 3, Danny in book 3, I got a better sense of her as a character. So I think that if we get to see her at Mac's age, it'd be well worth the wait.
Mhm. Mhm. It's funny because now we know, like Barons, we know that Jericho Barons, he's going to be around probably for the long haul,
Hmm.
because he's something. Getting back to Barons, he's something that we don't know, and that is like something that it plagued me for both book 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I'm like, what is he?
I don't think I honestly do not think we will ever find out what he is, but I will say my entire perspective about Jericho changed when I read the novella 1.5. It's from his perspective. Don't get me wrong, he's still a jackass, but you see that there might be just a little bit, and I mean a very tiny, microscopic bit of kindness in him.
Mm,
Just a
mm-hmm.
little.
Well, I'm gonna have to read that novella because I haven't read that, so I'm gonna definitely check it out because I'm curious to see another side of Jericho Barons. That's for sure.
He was. Just read it. I'll try. I mean, because it's so small. If I say anything, all it's gonna do is spoil it. I mean, it's seriously only like I don't know, 20, maybe 30 pages.
Okay.
It's
Well,
extremely small.
I'm gonna definitely check it out because I mean that character, that guy. I mean, he is the worst in a way, but it's like also you kind of feel like obviously he is protecting Mac and he does have his own motives. So clearly he is not doing it out of the kindness of his heart.
Hmm.
But I gotta think that eventually he's gonna become more likable to me
I'm
at some
hoping
point.
so, because if I'm telling you, if police finds out that I don't absolutely love him, I think she's gonna disown me. Ev-
Huh?
That's all everyone keeps saying. It's Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. And so far, I'm just not blown away by him. I do hear that in book 4, which I will be starting this weekend because I kind of have to. I'm getting really excited just talking about it all over again. But book 4, I hear that's when I really get to see the Jericho that everyone is in love with.
And you are right. As you know, I'm a book 5, and I do agree. Book 4 is where you get a little something extra from him, where you're like, ooh, well, maybe he's not that bad after all. And then he goes and does something. You're like, wait a minute, Jericho. That's all you gotta say.
As soon as I finish Mistborn, because I promised Nikki that I'm gonna read Mistborn, I am jumping straight into book 4. I have to.
Oh yeah,
especially
you do.
After especially after hearing all of this, I have to. Because I really, as of right now, as of book 1 and 2, Jericho is not. I'm not Team Jericho. I'm not saying, oh yay, I need to. No.
No, Jericho's not the business, and honestly, Blaine isn't either. But he is. I guess if I had to pick between the two to have some type of interest in Mac, I would have to pick Blaine at that point in time, even though he's not all the way on the up and up. But I almost, actually, at one point I even wondered, why are they even having any romantic affiliations at all? Like, let's just keep it about the book. Let's just keep it about the fighting. Let's not even go there.
Agreed. I mean, you have this whole prospect that, the world is basically about to end and there's a romance starting. Of all the times, the apocalypse is not the time to start sexy times. The apocalypse is the time to try and save everybody.
Right.
So
save yourself. Worry about trying to hook up later.
And that's something that annoyed me about Mac a lot in books 1 and 2, and I'm sure it continues throughout the series because I did read book 3 so far. She was very flip-floppy. Now, it went from, okay, well, I'm going to help Jericho to I'm going to help Blaine, so I'm going to be just about myself and make sure that I survive. It's like she couldn't decide which side of the fence she was on. If you're going to help, that's fine. But don't say, okay, I'm only on this person's side, and then, she was way too flip-floppy. I hated that about her. She could not make a sound decision and stick with it.
No, she couldn't. And you're right. She was flip-floppy. And on top of that, so she would, 1 minute she's Team Blaine, 1 minute she's Team Barons, and you know what? She would make these choices. It would be a bad choice, and she would not learn from the mistake. 2 minutes later, she's doing the same thing again. It's like, come on, girl. Come on.
She was beyond just thick-skinned, like thick-headed. She was just not that bright. She really was making one mistake just to turn around and make it again.
It was annoying, actually. I was kind of like, when is this chick going to get it together? Like, seriously, I cannot stand it.
Obviously we both had our issues with Mac in book 1 and book 2, and I'm sure that we'll keep having issues with her as we go through. It'd probably just switch up what it is. I will say that overall, book 1 and book 2, I really love the series so far. It has its problems. We don't love the characters. The pace is slow. I mean, we've said a lot of things that bug us about it, but at the end of the day, I still crave the next book. Like, I want to know what happens next.
Yeah. I gotta say, I think a part of that is Moning's ability to leave you with an awesome cliffhanger. I mean, it keeps you wanting more. Like, okay, I've got to find out what happens now.
And I know I'm jumping ahead. Book 3, my least favorite of all 3 until the last 3 chapters. Moning has a gift of just dragging you into something at the very end and just saying, oh, I'll be back. I love it. I love it. She has an amazing gift with cliffhangers. It's never just a, oh, I'll be back in a little bit. It's always I'm going to destroy your life and then walk away for a second.
Yeah, she's doing that. I'm going to drop the mic and walk off the stage bit at the end.
Yes. She is so good at it. I mean, again, jumping ahead, but at the end of book 3 when she did it, she, like you said, she had to leave us a note to say it's okay. She had to pat our back and say, I know I just did a bad thing, but you'll thank me later.
Yeah. And I was grateful for that because I was really like, seriously, right now, I can't believe that just happened. And then, of course, and then she's like, oh, don't worry, I foreshadowed this. Don't you worry now, it'll be okay. I'm like, all right.
It made you breathe just a second, like, oh, okay, okay.
Mhm.
She does that, and she does that at the end of every single book. She makes you yearn for what's going to happen next. She makes you say, okay, I have to go out. I mean, I finished book 1. I immediately rolled out the bed, drove 30 minutes away to my closest Barnes and Noble, and bought books 2, 3, and 4, like right
Mhm.
there. I
Mhm.
needed to know what was going to happen next.
Mhm. That's awesome. That's great. I love when a book does that. So, what did you think about the villains in book 1 and 2?
Okay, I'm gonna get a lot of evil faces for this, but I can honestly say I didn't hate the villains, not
Mhm.
at all, but I just felt very, ugh, this is so done before about the villains. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's like the Lord Master LM. He was probably the biggest cliche in the history of cliches.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I was like, man, he's bad ass for doing that right now.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh yeah, he was really bad. What was the guy's name that was working with him? I cannot remember right now. It was that guy
Hmm.
was pretty bad too.
You know what? I
Um,
got the book right here. Let me see.
yeah, yeah, he was pretty bad. I mean, all the villains actually. I mean, the Lord Master is the villain of villains, but he has like his little minions that are kind of doing his dirty work,
Hmm.
and it's gonna obviously I think we're gonna get to a point where we actually have to deal with the LM as Matt calls him, more on a serious tone. But right now she's got to get through these other people.
Right. And Minion
So.
1 from book 1, he was, I don't know, he was very cliche to me personally, but
Mhm,
I will say he held his own the same way Mac did
mhm,
when it came to, meeting up with him again later.
mhm.
And that's the most I
Now
can
was
say
that?
without spoiling it.
I know, was that book 2 where? See, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm gonna keep my mouth shut because I feel like, yeah, I can't, because I'll spoil it, and I don't want to do that. It's
Only
hard to
thing
talk about it.
it is because you don't want to spoil it. I mean, you have Minion 1, which was
Mhm,
just, I mean, he was a good minion. He was efficient. He was self-absorbed. He was kick-ass when necessary, and he had a few tricks up his sleeves. Then you have
mhm.
Minion 2, and Minion 2 was just,
Worse than Minion 1.
oh my goodness, he
He
gave it,
was, yeah,
right.
mm,
I don't
yeah,
want
he
to
was
spoil
bad.
it.
I know he was on a vengeance mission on behalf of Minion 1, basically for a minute. It seemed like
He was. I mean,
so.
he was horrible. I mean, as
Yeah.
far as villains go, he was the last person I wanted to be up against a fight in. No.
Oh my God, that guy, that guy. Oh my God, that guy.
People are looking at their screens right now
Like,
saying, "You're not telling me anything."
no, we can't. But like at the end of book 2, the minion. I mean, oh God, I can't even say anything because it's gonna be given away. I'm sorry, guys. I really am. I'm sure you appreciate us not giving it away.
Just go read it. Just
Yeah,
stop what you're doing and just go read it. It's totally
yeah,
worth it.
yeah. It totally is. I mean, and plus, even at the end of book 2, with that whole situation, I feel like we get to see another, even a little bit of Barron's being the hero again, a little bit. So
That's true. And
that's
it
good.
made me think that maybe he was only good in maybe Barron's was only somebody that I could like in a damsel in distress kind of thing. But then
Mhm,
you realize that Mac, she's not really a damsel in distress. Like
mhm,
she can
mhm,
hold her own. I mean,
mhm.
she's still, not the smartest person, but when it comes down to, getting stuff done, she can hold her own and she can really go up there just strong and say, "Let's do it."
Yeah, she can. And you know what? Not to like give anything away, but she gets stronger literally as the books go on. I mean, while personality wise, I think her growth may be a little slower, but as far as fighting, as far as going up against the enemy, as far as she goes head first, she jumps in, does what needs to be done, asks questions later when it comes down to defending herself and trying to
And
get out of tight situations.
right, and she's
Yeah.
so. I will give you this. I will give her this, and this is from book one, so not too much has happened yet. Even though I did not like her, and I still have my moments with her, she is a very resourceful person. As a character, when she has her back against the wall, she is already thinking, okay, how can I get out of here with minimal damage? Like
Mhm.
when Theo, who worked with Barons originally, she was psychotic. But
Mhm.
after Theo and that incident, remember the helmet thingy she made?
Oh yes. What does she call it? The Mac Halo.
How, I mean, I would have never thought. It's like, I mean, she has her moments where as a character, you're like, okay,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
appreciate this. This is what someone smart does. And then she goes and does something stupid, so
I know. It's like she has this thing about these, like even with Blaine, like she has this thing where okay, she thinks she's gonna use Blaine, so she does something to like think that it's gonna help her, and it just gets her into trouble, and it just causes all kind of ruckus. But she tries though. She tried it. She had to try. You
She
know.
does. She does. And I think she makes the mistake of thinking, oh, Barons is using me, or oh, Blaine is using me, or oh, and she thinks she can do that. But, they're thousands of years old. They got a little more practice at this than you do.
Exactly. She's like 22 trying to play with the big dogs, trying to use them
Like, y'all aren't
like
on the
they are
same
trying to use
level.
her.
Not on the same level at all. I
No.
need you to get back in your lane.
Yeah. Like seriously, like the way that she and Barons can have these um unspoken conversations, he is reading her. He knows exactly what she is thinking.
Right.
It doesn't even, it's written all over her face probably.
And
And
she
he's
think
got
that she just broke some code. No, honey, that's he knew.
yeah, exactly. That's so funny to me. But she had to try. I guess she had to try.
It's like a poodle fighting a pit bull. It's just so sad.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And it's funny because even in book two, and even after that, she's really no match for him. I mean,
Mm-mm.
he'll beat her at word games. He'll beat her at the playing the game. He will beat her, and she just tries to hold on for the ride and hope to get something out of it at the end of it almost.
And even when she loses at the end of the game,
Mm.
she goes back and antagonizes them and say, "Okay, well, let's play this game instead." No,
Like he's gonna be like, okay, sure, whatever you want.
it's a
No, no,
never-ending
he
cycle of
doesn't
her.
give her. Yeah, he doesn't give her an inch. Like she's on him about what are you? What are you? He doesn't. He doesn't. He evades, evades, evades. He's got that down. That character, he will give us as readers zilch. We get nothing.
Nothing. I appreciate that though because too often in books the heroine gets everything that she wants up front just by asking or putting out a pout or by showing that she's stronger than the average woman or something stupid. And Jericho's like, no,
Hmm.
I'm not
Hmm.
even going to justify that with an answer. I'm just going to
Hmm.
go to wherever the hell it is that I go for weeks on end.
Hmm. Hmm. And actually, I think that's another good thing about this book is that there is no like a lot of. I think this is why to me this falls under urban fantasy, like through and through. There is
Mhm.
no paranormal romance going on here. There is not people falling in love and oh that's my soulmate and all this crap. I mean that is like non-existent in these books,
Mm-mm.
and I appreciate that. It's fresh.
Right, I love that. For once, I love the fact that there isn't this whole insta love. Oh my goodness, I can't breathe without you. While the world is burning down to the ground around them.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
appreciate that. I mean, if anything does, again, I'm only through book three. If anything does morph later, it would have been like a slow build up, and I
Mhm.
appreciate a built romance versus one that just happened because they saw each other across the room.
Yeah, it's definitely more believable. And I think us as the reader, if it does go there, me personally, I can appreciate it a whole lot more knowing what they've been through, you know?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Seeing the struggle that they went through and seeing, oh, you know what? After everything they went through, I can see that happening. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, weren't y'all just fighting with each other and now you're in love? No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, overall, it's funny because at first, you know how I was saying in the beginning that I thought the first book was meh. You know, it was okay. I found it middle of the road, but I feel like the more I read this or listen to in this case, the more I get into the story, the further I go, the more I crave it. I'm so glad I pushed forward because it is better and better every time. And that's what I say to you guys who are watching. If you feel that way about book one, or if you feel a way like you read book one but you don't know if you can continue, I think you should push through because the payoff, it gets better.
I second that. If you are, again, I started Darkfever about like 4 different times over the course of 2 years, and I could not stick with it. But once you get past that initial hump, it is completely worth any slowness, any doubts, it's worth it. It's a really, really good read. Like I love the series so far. Even with its issues and its problems and its characters, I highly recommend.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Me too. I can't wait till you read book four because then we can chat on Twitter about it.
This weekend, I promise I'm gonna tweet you all my feels because I just know, especially since I've been hearing so much about Barons and how my perspective will change about him in that book. So
It might a little bit, a little bit. Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm gonna finish Miss Four and then I'm jumping straight into it. I have to see, I have to know because at this rate, I mean everyone's all Team Jericho, Team Barons. I'm like no.
No, not so much. I mean, actually, even at this point, I'm not necessarily Team Barons, Jericho Barons, but I definitely have a newfound respect for him, at least for me. I still don't necessarily think they are a good match, but that's my personal little opinion. And we'll leave it at that because you might have a different opinion
I
after
really
you.
gotta hurry up. Okay, as soon as I started, I'm flooding your feed with all my tweets. That is happening.
Okay. Thanks for the warning.
You're welcome. You are welcome. And then
Yeah,
I'm gonna
so,
go out and buy the rest.
all right. All right, so let's see. Is there anything else we need to cover on books one and two, Blood Fever and Dark Fever?
I think we hit all the real points. What we liked, what we didn't like, and why everybody needs to just drop what they're doing and go read it now.
Yeah, read it. We said, go ahead, go pick it up right now.
Right now. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. Just get past that first hump.
Mhm.
You'll be good.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing us blabber on, so we'll try to wrap this up. Thanks again, Octavia, for doing this with me.
No, thank you for asking. This was so much fun. I can't wait until we do books 3 and 4.
Oh, I know. And you guys stick around because we will do three and four, and then we will do five and six, and then we will continue on as the series is published. So if you guys want to know what we think about this as the story goes on, as the series progresses, come back to Shelf Addiction's YouTube page, and we'll be right here.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much, everybody, for having me and for letting me visit the page today and blab on and on and on.
It was good to have you. We'll talk later, okay?
All right, sounds like a plan.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.